Assalamualaikum. My name is Syafiqah binti ZAHARI, and I will present my report, which is the effectiveness of open book assessment on fostering student critical thinking skill. A study was on FPTT student. For introduction, an open book assessment is an assessment method designed in a way that allows students to refer to either class notes and summaries or a memory aid, textbook or other approved material while answering questions. Online open book assessment has been a common alternative to a traditional invigilated test or examination during the COVID-19 pandemic. The open book format reduces student anxiety and promotes higher level learning, such as reduced reliance upon memorization and prompts students to focus on understanding concepts and principles. Problem statement. According to Syafiqah et al. 2006, open book formative assessment was highly predictive of achievement on both open book and closed book summative assessment, whereas closed book assessment only predicted performance on the closed book summative assessment. According to Park in 2010, students need to acquire the academic vocabulary specific to the topic they are reading about in order to begin to understand the text and the view comprehension to higher order level of critical thinking skill. According to the Jared Vance et al. 2008, the way students prepare themselves for an assessment depends on how they perceive assessment before, during, and after the assessment, and this effect can have either positive or negative influence on learning. In this slide, we will discuss on research question and research objective. There are three research questions in this report, which is first, what is the perception of students towards open book assessment in developing critical thinking? Number two is what are the challenges that students of FPTT face during open book assessment? And number three is to what extent open book assessment support the development of student critical thinking skill. For research objective, there are also three. First, to investigate the awareness of the importance of critical thinking for students. Number two is to examine the challenges that students of FPTT face during open book assessment. And number three is to study the extent of open book assessment in fostering student critical thinking skill. This is a literature review in this report. Firstly, for open book assessment. An open book assessment is one which students are allowed to refer to their notes, textbook or other approved material while answering questions. For closed book assessment, the closed book assessment method has been used for centuries in traditional institutions as a rigorous method for knowledge assessment. And for critical thinking is the intellectual discipline process of actively and skillfully conceptualizing, applying, analyzing, synthesizing, or evaluating information gathered from or generated by observation, experience, reflection, reasoning, or communication as a guide to belief and action. In this slide, I will talk about a literature review for independent variables. My first independent variable is student learning behavior. Students had used a more holistic approach by making broader connection in an open book assessment environment compared to a closed book environment. Type of questions. The question on an open book test will ask students to explain, evaluate, or compare things from their text. And the third one is ability to apply knowledge. Students prefer open book tests to closed book tests, experience less examination stress during open book tests, and use less time to prepare for open book tests but require more time to complete the test, according to Magellan. This is a proposed research framework for my report. For independent variables, there are three, which is student learning behavior, types of question, and ability to apply knowledge. For dependent variable is developing critical thinking skill. For research methodology, this is a research method that I use in my report. First, for research design, I use explanatory research design and Likert scale. For research methodology, I use a quantitative method, primary data, secondary data, which is internet search, report, article, and journal. For data collection method, I use a validity and reliability. For research location, I use a UTEM student, which is mainly focused on student of FPTT, and I get 123 students of FPTT that have answered the survey questions. For research strategy, I use a questionnaire design, sampling design, and pilot testing in order to uh, verify the validity and reliability of the survey questions. For data analysis method, I use a descriptive analysis, Pearson analysis, and multiple regression analysis. This is a descriptive analysis for demographic. In gender, the highest percent of students that have answered the question is female, which is 72%. For the age, the range of 23 to 24 years old, a student have answered this question, which is 68%. For race, mostly Malay students have answered this question with 81%. And for program, BTMI have dominates the highest percent of students that have answered this question, the survey question with 69%. For education level, mostly bachelor's degree students that have answered this question, and it dominates all with 100%. And 4 year of study, mostly year 4 that have answered the questions A, which 81.3% of students. For data analysis, we can see that reliability statistics where combat alpha show the result with 0.746, which means the reliability test of variable is accepted because it's higher than 0.7. For model regression analysis, you can see that 81.9% of the variance influenced by IV, and the remaining of 18.4% was affected by the other factor. In the Pearson correlation analysis, we can see that the score of each independent variable has score higher than 0.7, and this show that the relationship of IV and DV is very strong and positive. For hypothesis testing, we can see that based on on the result, all the independent variables have the different significant value, which is 0 and 0.039 and 0.016. The p-value of this is smaller than 0.5. Thus, the alternative of each independent variable is accepted. Therefore, the hypothesis for student learning behavior with a student learning behavior positively influence the development of critical thinking skill is accepted. And for type of question positively influence the development of critical thinking skill is also accepted. And for ability to apply knowledge, which is ability to apply knowledge positively influence the development of critical thinking skill. This hypothesis also accepted. For discussion of research objective in RO1, which is to investigate the awareness of the importance of critical thinking for students. According to critical thinking corporation, critical thinking is an ability which is beyond memorization. When students think critically, they are encouraged to think for themselves, to question hypotheses, to analyze and synthesize the events to go one step further by developing new hypotheses and test them against the fact. Critical thinking occurs when students are analyzing, evaluating, interpreting, and or synthesizing information and applying creative thought to form an argument, solve a problem, or reach a conclusion. Therefore, the RO1 is achieved. For RO2, to examine the challenge that students of FPTT face during open book assessment, R value is 0.907, which means this study is valued. The R2 value can be stated that as 81.6% of all independent variables are contributes to the dependent variable. The respondent also agree that open book assessment could challenge one mind. Open book examination can test both aspects of knowledge and ability to think through questions that ask students to see the ability in real situation of their profession according to Muhanan. For RO3, to study the extent of open book assessment in fostering student critical thinking skill. According to Mohanan, state that open book examination can help students to understand the course, content, and also test their ability and competence to apply this knowledge in a new form. The limitation that I have faced during completing this report is time constraint, limitation of students' time in answering the survey, and the method of survey delivery, which is only focused on question online Google form. For recommendation, I suggest that later on we can use the other data collection method and increase the number of sample size. For contribution, I can understand on student perceptions toward development of critical thinking skill and understand the factors that can influence the student in developing critical thinking skill. That's all from me. Thank you.